What if you're in a marriage right now and it's not turning out to be everything you thought it would be? How about you thought, hey, I thought I'd be further along vocationally. I thought I'd be further along educationally. I thought I'd be further along financially. Maybe you wanted a child and you haven't been able to get pregnant. You haven't been able to have a child. These are very real things that we go through. And our first inclination always is, don't you care that I'm about to drown? Hey, Pastor Rick here. So excited that you decided to join us for this series on good news. We're looking at the Gospel of Mark. Gospel means good news. And we're looking at the Gospel according to Mark. We're going to be looking at initially 7 verses in Mark chapter 4. And then we're going to just take a look at Mark chapter 5 at some verses and look what happens and the rest of the story. I don't know about you, but I'm very, very certain you're just like me. There's been times in your life where you've questioned, does God really know? Does he care? Does he see? God, where are you? Do you really notice what's going on here? If I were to say, raise your hand, I'd say, man, I can see a whole bunch of hands out there. Because there's been several times in my life that I felt that way. Where are you, God? What are you doing? And let me see it. That's really the story of today. It's about a storm that Jesus' followers experienced and how Jesus brought them through the storm. Storms happen in life. As a matter of fact, Jesus in Matthew chapter 7 promised that we all would go through storms. There's rains and thunder and lightning in all of our lives. Not if it happens, but when it happens. No, listen, I don't want to burst your bubble here. I don't want to like make you think less of me. But just because I'm a pastor, yeah, I still get red lights when I'm driving late somewhere. I still have these things called flat tires. My grass grows and it needs to be cut. Like, just because I'm a pastor doesn't mean life is perfect. It means that there's challenges, but Jesus is right there with me. So I didn't mean to burst your bubble about me, but that really is the truth. Okay, let's get to the text today. Mark chapter 4. Jesus here, he just gets done teaching. It's a full day of teaching. I mean, he's teaching, and teaching some more. And he actually was in a boat teaching at this point, actually all of the verses in chapter 4 leading up from here. As a matter of fact, Jesus was the first boat preacher. That's right. This was very different. You see, he taught, the teachers were in synagogues, or rabbis would sometimes sit, and their students, their pupils would sit around them, and they would teach in that format. But Jesus, because he wanted to reach more people, he got into a boat and pushed off from the shore so he could not only just talk with 10 or 12 people, or not maybe even in a synagogue, maybe with 100 or 150. I'm going to use that term there. But listen, there's thousands of people where he could project and his voice would carry. Jesus was all about reaching more people with the gospel, the good news of Jesus Christ. So he gets done preaching after a long, hard day. He's tired, he's weary, and so here it is. As evening came, Jesus said to his disciples, let's cross to the other side of the lake. So they took Jesus in the boat and started out, leaving the crowds behind. And yes, there were other boats with him. It's just interesting here. So Jesus is tired and he's weary, and he decides to leave the crowds behind. If I just stopped right here and spent the rest of this teaching about how we need to leave the crowd behind and simply pull away to where Jesus wants us to be, that would be good enough here. So they're going to the other side of the lake. They're going to the Gentiles, people who are far from God here. Very, very, very clear here. This is what Jesus did. What length does he go to reach those who are very, very far from his heart here? So there was a big boat, and then there were little boats. Just think it's an interesting nuance there. But when he said he was going to go to the other side of the lake, here, it was literally he was going to go to people who were unworthy, that they were undesirable. They were not like him. Many times Jesus wants us to go to the very people that are very unlike us. They're not like the way we think or the way we do things here. That's what Jesus was willing to go to, dirty places and in dark places, to reach people with the gospel, the good news here. So he makes a direct command. Let's cross to the other side of the lake here. Now Jesus said, hey, let's not just get out in the lake and just see how things go. Let's just wander around. No, he gave a command. We're going to the other side. Verse 37. So they listen to Jesus. They're in the boat. They're going to the other side. And soon a fierce storm came up. High waves were breaking into the boat, and it began to fill with water. Jesus was sleeping in the back of the boat with his head on a cushion, or what we would consider a pillow here. The disciples woke him shouting, "Teacher, don't you care that we are about to drown?" So I want you to picture this. You see, first of all, they obeyed Jesus and they found themselves in a storm. There's a story in the Old Testament about Jonah being swallowed by a whale. Then the whale spits him up onto dry land. Okay? Now, Jonah got into a storm because of his disobedience. He was going in the wrong direction, away from God. The disciples were obeying Jesus, and obedience brought them into a storm. You see, the first thing you have to ask yourselves when you get into a storm in your life, was it because of disobedience or obedience? Yes, sometimes obedience takes us into a storm. It takes us right into a fierce storm. Now the Sea of Galilee really was what we would consider a lake. It really wasn't that big, but it was known for storms kicking up very, very quickly. It was a rough, again, Sea of Galilee, Lake of Galilee. It was really rough waters, and it would come here. So the journey that they were on was roughly probably about 5 miles. Most scholars say somewhere between 5 and 7 miles from where he was to going to the other side here. So they were in obedience to Jesus. A storm came up, and then all of a sudden here, they find themselves with water breaking into the boat. Now, if trained fishermen say this is a fierce storm, then it's a fierce storm. That's right. You see, it'd be one thing if you or I, who were not trained, would be like, whoa, any bit of water going up and any bit of boat going up and down is a fierce storm. But when a fisherman says that, you know it's a fierce storm. My family, a few of our kids and we went out onto Lake Erie. We went on a charter fishing, and we were catching walleye. And then all of a sudden, like, the weather started to change, and the captain said we needed to get back. We needed to get back to land. And so we pulled in all the lines, got all the gear in, and we started getting back to land. Now, we were out there far enough where you could not see land. There were no bearings at all. To be honest, I was disoriented. And the more the boat started to go up and down, the more disoriented I got. And so we got everybody in, and we started heading in. And I had to trust the pilot or the captain of the boat here, that he knew where he was going. Because the boat, as we were plowing through, we were completely drenched from the water coming over the boat here. I mean, we were just plowing and going through, and the weather was changing. It was raining. It was really, really horrible. All I knew was I wanted some dry land. And when I saw dry land, and listen, I didn't care if we were in Canada or if we were in Erie, Pennsylvania. I just wanted off that boat. Okay, but because it was just pouring and coming in, it was disorienting and all these things. But when I got to land, I jumped out of that boat. I'm just telling you, that's the first thing that I did. I was thankful that we got out. You see, storms disorient us, and we have to trust the captain, the one who took us there, who's the very one who can get us to dry land. That's the first thing we need to realize here. So I want you to picture this. Water's coming in, and they're starting to bail water out. They're bailing water, and it's like, row harder, bail water, row harder. Could you imagine the confusion? They're yelling at one another. Come on, point the ship this way, point the boat this way. So as the more they're yelling and they're bailing water, and there's all these things happening, it's going crazy. They're yelling at one another. They're disoriented. That's what storms do to us here. You can just imagine all the chaos. But the thing is in the middle of a storm, what we tend to do is we want to row harder. We want to bail more water. And really what we want is we want God to bless our self-sufficient efforts rather than trust in Him. And at this point in their storm, they were just simply trying to work harder and do more, when in reality, Jesus is asleep in the back of the boat. And not only is He asleep, He has a pillow. He has a cushion here. He looks really comfortable, and He looks at peace here. Now, Jesus promised they would get to the other side. He promised them this. He didn't promise them, hey, we're going to get to the middle of the lake and, hey, we may drown, we may die. No, He said, you're going to get to the other side. I want to speak to your heart right now. There's many of you feel like you're in a desperate situation, and I want to tell you, surely you will not drown, surely you will not die. Jesus has you. He's asleep in your boat, and He is going to get you to the other side. But I want to focus on a key verse here. And this key verse in verse 38. Teacher, don't you care? Don't you care that we're going to drown? I know this, that in life, when things happen and storms happen, one of the first things we do is, hey, God, don't you care? And if you stay there long enough, it'll turn into, hey, God, you don't care. Just a little bit of those words switch in there. Don't you care? You don't care. And that's an accusation that we can't use, because all of us are struggling with, does Jesus really see? Does He really know? And does He really care? This has still been something that I share with people, even people that I meet who are far from Him. I just constantly want to share those three words. He does care. So what do you do in the middle of a marriage that maybe ended and it caused a lot of hurt? It was a storm. Maybe there was even abuse that went on. What if you're in a marriage right now and it's not turning out to be everything you thought it would be? What do you do when your kids that you raised and trained to be a certain way, they aren't that certain way? It's a storm that you're in. It really is. How about you thought, hey, I thought I'd be further along vocationally. I thought I'd be further along educationally. I thought I'd be further along financially. And I'm in financial distress again. Maybe you wanted a child and you haven't been able to get pregnant, and you haven't been able to have a child. What if you had a miscarriage? These are very real things that we go through. Very real. And they create a storm. And our first inclination always is, hey, teacher, don't you care that I'm about to drown? There are people watching right now that you're in the midst of a storm and you feel like you're going to drown. And I want to let you know, Jesus is in your boat. He's taking a rest. He's with you, and He's for you, and He's in there. He's right inside you. He's working through this situation here. And I don't know what your storm is right now, but we all got one. If you don't have one right now, you're going to get one. Storms happen. And so Jesus is in the back. And here, let's keep reading here in verse 39. When Jesus woke up, He rebuked the wind and said to the waves, "Silence, be still." Suddenly the wind stopped, and there was a great calm. And then he said, why are you afraid? Do you still have no faith? Now, first of all, I think it's interesting. The waves didn't wake him. Going up and down in the boat didn't wake him. The water coming in didn't wake him. I can only imagine the thunder and the lightning and all the yelling and the screaming and the fishermen doing everything that they can on their own did not wake him. But when they woke him, when they tapped him, he woke up. I want to let you know that sometimes we're wanting Jesus to wake up and solve our problems, but we don't want to just tap him and say, Jesus, I need you. Jesus, I need what only you can do here. That's what he's waiting for us to do, is just tap him and say, Jesus. He wakes up when we call on him, when we ask him, when we go to him. And he says these words, he says silence, which in most translations equal peace. Peace, be still. And this word be still, it literally means to mute. It means to muzzle. It would be like muzzling an ox or muzzling a dog, putting a muzzle on it. It means, I'm going to use this word here, shut up. This is the word, shut up. You can't use this with your siblings if your kids out there. You can't use this with your brothers and sisters, but you can use it with the devil when there's a storm. Peace, silence, be still. And Jesus is about to step into your world. He's stepping into your life and he's saying, peace, be still. Silence. You see, the storm had to have some demonic activity attached to it, because why would Jesus use the same words here that he used to heal people in other cases? That means release people from captivity, release people from the demonic activity in their life. Peace, be still, be muted, be muzzled. Stop it, shut up. See, there are demonic forces in our life, even here, trying to keep Jesus and his disciples from the mission in which he had for them. We are going to the other side. That was a command. That was intentionality. That was the mission of Jesus to go here. See, so he stopped it. And yeah, there's demonic activity, but we can't be ruled by the demonic activity. We got to be ruled by what Jesus Christ has asked us to do. Because when we're in God's boat, in his will, going in his direction, he is there to muzzle the storms and the demonic forces in our lives. That's what he does. That's him at his our best. We have to hold on to his goodness. Hold on to who he really is, even in the midst of these times here. Opposition happens here. Jesus is sleeping. He's on a pillow. And see, what we want, though, is we want Jesus to notice all of our bailing, all of our rowing, all of our doing, and we want him to bless our human effort. And what he says here is just so interesting what Jesus says. He's like, hey, man, why are you afraid? See, fear and faith cannot function together. Why are you afraid? Do you still have no faith? Now, I want to point out here, he did not rebuke the disciples for having fear. They were choosing fear over faith. See, reality, waves are coming in our boat. Reality, there's thunder. Reality, we're going up and down and all around and the boat is rocking. Reality, all these things are happening here. They're very real. But what he was saying to them, don't choose fear, choose faith. I'm right here. I'm right with you. The problem wasn't the storm. The problem wasn't they didn't see Jesus with them in the storm. That was the situation going on here. So the fear of the storm, the fear of all these things, they didn't have faith. That was the problem with this situation. They didn't have faith to look to God here because they accused Jesus of don't you care. We got to be careful when we start telling Jesus you don't care. Don't you care? Why don't you care? Do you really see what's going on in my life here, Jesus? He sees, He knows, He cares. And so when you see Jesus with a pillow, sleeping during the storm, why don't we just go and take a nap with Him? Yeah, why don't we go with Him and just say, you know what, if Jesus is sleeping, I'm going to sleep right beside Him because that's a safe place to be because I have obeyed Him here. You know, there's a lot of things going on in my life right now that I can tell you this. I feel like at times I've been bailing, I've been rowing, I've been doing everything I can, and I don't feel like God's seeing. I don't feel like He knows. I don't feel like He cares. I don't feel like any of these things. But you know what I'm realizing more and more is I have to choose faith over fear. I have to see Jesus. He's in the boat with me at Bridge City Church. He's with us here, and He knows. And He's there. He's just taking a nap here. See what I think what happened to these disciples is the same thing that happens to you and me. We lose the big picture in life. We lose the big picture of what Jesus is doing in our lives. We lose that, and when we lose the big picture, we cling to our circumstances because our circumstances become bigger than the big picture here. This story is just so beautiful because it really communicates about faith, about the big picture of Jesus in His humanity. He was tired, He was weary, He was sleeping. But Jesus in His divinity silences the storm. He relates to us in one moment and He stops storms in the next here. And we have to stop just trying to ask Jesus to help our human effort be more effective, but we need to go to Him in faith and say, Jesus, this is what I need from you, from you right now. Can we do that in our lives? You see, as the storm stopped, they kept going. And now, for the rest of the story. Just a few things I want to highlight in the first several verses in Mark chapter 5. The first one, in Mark 5:1, so they arrived at the other side of the lake, and then when Jesus climbed out of the boat, a man possessed by an evil spirit came from the tombs to meet Him. Now, if you're the disciples, you can just imagine. Really? We just went through a storm, and look what greets us here. Nobody's greeting us with breakfast or appetizers. No. We get greeted by a demonic man here. Someone who, in all honesty, we would say, this crazy dude, this crazy man here. This man lived in burial caves, verse 3, and could no longer be restrained, even when in chains. So they put him in chains and shackles. This is called captivity. Spiritually, the devil puts us in chains. Now, this demonically possessed man would break the chains. He was so out of his mind. You see, this is somebody that you and we would cross the street to go around. We wouldn't want to be around him. We would protect our families from as a man. We would do that. He was suffering from like a mental illness that was very, very severe. It was causing him to hurt himself. Something that was causing him not to live in a way that was becoming to others here. My heart breaks for this. And so this is what kind of man Jesus was going to help. You see, let me just point this out. If we get so focused on our storm, we're going to forget that the reason we're going through a storm is to help somebody else. That's right. There's somebody at the other side of the lake. There's somebody at the other side of your storm that Jesus wants you to bring life and help to. And if we get only wrapped up in our situation, in our thing, we're going to miss who Jesus really wants us to reach here. Jesus went all to this great lengths to reach the one that's in captivity, in darkness, in dirty, and in shackles, in all these things. This is how much Jesus really knows, and He sees and He cares. Those that are suffering some incurable, horrible circumstances in their lives. But let's not get wrapped up in our storm, in our story. Let's get wrapped up in the big picture and the promise and the power of Jesus Christ. That's where He shows up and does His best here. Society couldn't help Him. God knows they tried, but Jesus was here. And when society, all the people that society says, forget about them, that's when Jesus shows up and says, let me help. That's what he does right here. So Jesus does something miraculous. I'm going to sum up a lot of verses here. He sets this man free. That's right, the man becomes of sound mind. He literally gets changed on the spot by one moment with Jesus Christ. That's what he came to this other side for. So here in verse 18, Jesus goes and he gets back in the boat. It's like, wait a minute. We went through this storm. We finally got here. And I'm having a little PTSD about boats right now. You see, Jesus, I've trusted you before, and I got into a storm. I thought if I started tithing, giving 10%, all of my finances would be perfect. I didn't realize that the car was going to need brakes and that there was going to be a roof leaking. Yeah. Okay, see, we think everything's going to be perfect if we just pray this simple prayer. And Jesus says, I'm taking you through a storm. Remember the big picture. See, Jesus went to heal the one. That's how much he loves the one. Now he's getting back in the boat. And what Jesus is saying to many of you listening right now, are you willing to get back in the boat and go with Jesus on the next leg of the journey of your life? Well, you were hurt by a pastor. You were hurt by a church. You trusted God and he didn't come through. You got in this storm in your marriage, with your kids, with finances, with a job, with education, all these things. And what Jesus is saying, I have another leg of the journey for you. I have another thing that I'm calling you to. Jesus is inviting you on a journey. Will you get back in the boat with him? Yes. And the man who had been demon-possessed begged to go with him. But Jesus says, no, you go to your family and tell them everything the Lord has done for you and how merciful he's been. And so what we want to do is when we get set free, we need to go to as many people as possible. This man went to 10 different towns and told everybody about the mercy and the grace of God. He went to 10 different places and shared the goodness and grace of God. Will you be one of those ones? Will you go share of your release from captivity with others? Will you do that? So the man went off and he did exactly that. And Jesus gets in his boat and he moves on. That's what Jesus is asking us to do here. He sets us free so that we can move on in the next leg of the journey. What we see in this story is how to have faith over fear. We got to see what Jesus is doing in the midst of a storm and not doubt that he still really is a good God who has good plans, good purposes, and his power for our lives. I hope and pray that today, as a result of these verses from the Bible that we studied and I talked with you about, that they'll become home to you. And that the next time you're in a storm, you'll remember Jesus is sleeping in the boat. He has a purpose for your life. It's to help free other people and set them free in a very real and a very dynamic way. If that's you today and you're in a storm, I would like to pray for you right now. Heavenly Father, I thank you for everybody who's watching and listening right now. God, I ask you, Lord God, that in the midst of their storm, that they find peace. As that storm is muzzled right now, that Jesus, there will be peace and silence. Lord God, let the storm cease so they can get on to what you've asked them to do in their lives, Lord. And let them free other people. And for those today, Jesus, that are afraid to get back in the boat and go on a journey with you, may today be the day they get back on point with you, not allowing their past to control their future. In Jesus' name. Now, if you're here with us today and you don't have a day or a moment or a time when Jesus Christ became the forgiver of your past and the leader to your future. If you don't have a day, a moment, or time where you ask Jesus Christ to forgive you of all the times you fell short, you've missed the mark, and all those things in your life, and you received that lifting of all that pain and shame and guilt, today can be your day. Ask Jesus to forgive you of your sin, and then ask Him to lead you on the next leg of this journey. Ask Jesus to lead you into your future, and then become a follower of Him. Ask Him to forgive you. Ask Him to lead you. That's the first step, not the last step, of the journey that we have, the journey of faith with Jesus. Thank you so very much for being with us today. Hey, make sure that you come back, because we're going to continue walking through the gospel according to Mark. See you then.